I never thought I'd be the kind of guy to find himself in a situation like this. My name's Tyler, and I had what I thought was a solid marriage with my wife, Jessica. We met in college, and after years of dating, we tied the knot 3 years ago. Everything about our life together felt right. She was my partner in everything, my confidant and my best friend. But lately, things started to change. Jessica had always been a bit high-strung, but the past few months were different. She'd come home late from work more often, and when I asked her about it, she'd brush it off with a casual, "Oh, just some extra projects at the office." At first, I bought it. After all, she worked in marketing, a fast-paced job that demanded a lot. But then came the little things. She'd become increasingly secretive with her phone, guarding it like it contained state secrets. The once hot and loving texts had turned into one-word responses, and I started feeling like a ghost in my own home. I noticed she was dressing differently, too, more revealing clothes, more trips to the salon, and my favorite perfume of hers, the one I'd bought her for our first anniversary, had vanished. I tried to shake off the growing unease brewing in my gut, convincing myself I was just being paranoid. But that feeling kept clawing at me, so I decided to dig a little deeper. One afternoon, I got off work early, excited to surprise Jessica with a spontaneous dinner. I walked into our living room only to find her phone sitting on the kitchen counter, buzzing incessantly. I picked it up, hesitating for a split second before deciding to take a peek. What I found made my blood run cold. A barrage of text messages flooded my screen, and the name that stalked across the display was one that made my gut twist: a tattoo artist named Carter. The messages ranged from flirty to explicit, and I felt like I'd been punched in the face. Jessica was telling this guy things she never shared with me, sharing intimate thoughts that made me feel like I was living in a nightmare. I felt the heat rise to my face, anger boiling over, but I couldn't act just yet. I needed to confront her with proof, not just my suspicions. That evening, Jessica came home wearing a flirty dress that screamed date night. She was practically floating with excitement, and I knew I had to keep my cool. As she walked in, I could smell the perfume that wasn't hers, the one I'd never recognized before. My heart raced as I prepared to confront her. "Hey, babe, ready for a fun night?" She chirped, her excitement contrasting sharply with the storm brewing inside me. I replied with a flat, "We need to talk." Her smile faltered, and I could see the flicker of uncertainty in her eyes. I laid the phone on the table between us and watched as she glanced down. The color drained from her face as she read the messages. "Tyler, I can explain." She stammered, but I could see the gaping hole of guilt behind her excuses. It was like watching a light dim in her eyes. Jessica had never been good at lying, and now she was all too aware that her cover was blown. "You've been cheating on me, Jess," I said flatly, trying to keep the fury from my voice. Her face twisted into a mix of anger and panic as she scrambled for words, promising me it was just a fling, that it meant nothing. In that moment, my heart shattered into a million pieces. The woman I loved had betrayed me in the worst possible way. I could feel the anger rising like a tidal wave, crashing over me, and all I wanted was to erase every mark of her from my life. The emotional impact hit me like a freight train. I was furious, heartbroken, and utterly lost. How could I have not seen this? How could she do this to me? My mind raced with a million thoughts, but one stood out: the need for revenge, to ensure she felt the sting of this betrayal. I wasn't going to let her walk away unscathed. The decision on how to deal with it was brewing, and I knew I had to act fast. I felt as though I was losing pieces of myself with every word she spoke, and I desperately needed a plan, something that would allow me to take control of the situation. This wasn't just about ending things. It was about making sure she understood the depth of her betrayal. My heart pounded in my chest as I started to think of the steps I would take to erase her from my life, not just emotionally but symbolically as well. I was done being the victim in this twisted game. As the confrontation unfolded, Jessica's frantic attempts to justify her actions only fueled the fire of my anger. "Tyler, it didn't mean anything. You know how we've been distant lately," she pleaded, her voice trembling. The irony of her statement was almost laughable. She was the one who had created this distance, the one who had chosen to seek comfort in the arms of someone else. It felt surreal, sitting there watching the woman I once adored unraveling before me, desperately grasping at straws to salvage her own reputation while disregarding my pain. I cut her off, my voice steady despite the chaos swirling inside me. "No, Jessica, it doesn't matter what it meant to you. You made a choice, and that choice was to betray me." My words hung in the air, thick with tension. I could see the panic creeping into her features. She knew she had crossed a line, one that couldn't be uncrossed. Yet her bravado persisted, and she snapped back, "You've been so wrapped up in your work, I needed something more." Her accusations felt like a slap in the face. "That's your excuse. You can't just go screw someone else because you feel neglected." I shot back, my voice rising. It was infuriating to see her play the victim when she was the one who'd taken the knife and stabbed me in the back. I felt my heart racing as I realized I wasn't just angry, I was devastated. My mind was a tidal wave of emotions: betrayal, humiliation, and an overwhelming sense of loss. I shook my head, pulling myself back to the present, to that moment, where everything I thought I knew about my life was coming crashing down around me. After what felt like hours, our argument dwindled into a silence thick with unspoken words. Jessica's eyes darted around the room, and a part of me relished in her discomfort. I was done letting her narrative dictate my emotions. I had to reclaim my power. "Tyler, please, let's talk about this. We can work through it. I love you," she cried, her voice now tinged with desperation. But the sincerity in her words felt hollow, like echoes of a distant memory. I couldn't believe anything she said anymore. Love. She had thrown that out the window the moment she decided to sleep with someone else. As she continued to plead, I formulated a plan, a way to ensure I wouldn't just be a victim of this betrayal. I thought about the tattoo she had on her wrist, a delicate script that read, "Forever yours." It had been a symbol of her devotion, a mark of our love. But now it felt like a taunt, a reminder of everything she had sullied. I wanted to erase those marks, not just from her skin, but from my life entirely. "Here's the deal, Jess. I want you out. I can't do this anymore," I said, my voice colder than ice. Her eyes widened in disbelief, and for a moment I thought she'd protest, but the reality of my decision sunk in. "What do you mean out? You can't be serious," she gasped, but I was resolute. I didn't want to hear excuses or empty promises. I was done. I wanted to take back my life. "Pack your bags. You can stay with your friend Sarah until you figure things out." I watched her crumble, the fight draining from her as the gravity of the situation settled in. I felt a strange mix of satisfaction and sorrow. I was taking control of my life, but the pain of losing my partner was still fresh. Jessica stood rooted in place, her expression shifting from shock to anger. "You'll regret this, Tyler, you'll see." She spat, and I could see the rage boiling beneath her surface. But there was no turning back now. I wasn't going to let her gaslight me into feeling guilty for demanding respect. The next few days were a whirlwind of emotions. The house felt empty without her, and it was strange to navigate a space that had once felt like home, now tainted by betrayal. I found myself scrolling through social media, haunted by memories of happier times, photos of our vacations, our wedding day, and all the moments that had led us to this point. I knew I had to act swiftly. I decided to sever those ties completely, to symbolize my newfound freedom from her betrayal. I made an appointment with a tattoo artist, the same one Jessica had used for her. This wasn't just about her tattoo, it was about taking back my life, reclaiming my narrative from the ashes of our shattered relationship. As I prepared for the appointment, I felt a surge of adrenaline. This was not just an act of revenge, it was a statement. I was erasing her from my life in every possible way. I wanted to stand in front of that artist and say, "Get rid of it all. I want nothing left of her." I arrived at the studio, the air thick with the smell of antiseptic and ink. My heart raced as I stepped inside. I was ready to take this final step into my new life, a life free from the chains of infidelity. The tattoo artist, a burly man with an array of colorful tattoos of his own, looked up and greeted me with a nod. "Hey man, what can I do for you today?" he asked, an eager spark in his eyes. "I want to erase a tattoo," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. It's a symbol of betrayal and I need it gone." He nodded, understanding instantly, and led me to his chair. As I sat down, I felt an exhilarating mix of anticipation and fear. This was more than just a physical alteration, it was an act of liberation. I was reclaiming my identity, my sense of self. With each pulse of the laser, I felt a weight lifting off my shoulders, a catharsis that I desperately needed. In that moment, I realized that I wasn't just erasing a tattoo, I was erasing the pain, the heartache, and the betrayal. I was on my way to becoming whole again. The laser pulses felt like a fresh start with each zap, as if the machine was not only removing the ink but also the memories tied to that tattoo, memories of Jessica's laughter, her touch, and the way she used to look at me with love. As the ink faded away, I felt the chaos inside me begin to settle. It was a physical representation of the emotional turmoil I had been experiencing, and finally, I was doing something to take control. Once the session was over, the tattoo artist wrapped my arm and gave me some aftercare instructions. "This will take a few sessions," he explained, "but it'll be worth it. You'll forget it was ever there." I nodded, appreciating his effort to turn my frown into a future free of reminders. As I left the tattoo studio, I felt lighter, like I was shedding not only the tattoo, but also the burden of betrayal that Jessica had placed upon me. But as I walked to my car, the echoes of our confrontation replayed in my mind. The way she pleaded for forgiveness while simultaneously playing the victim stung. How could she think I would ever want to work through our marriage after what she had done? That night was surreal. I lay in bed alone, the silence deafening. The absence of Jessica felt both liberating and haunting. I couldn't shake the memories of the good times we had shared, the dreams we had built together. But then I remembered her betrayal, the secret messages, the lies. It was a sobering reminder that the woman I loved had betrayed my trust in the ugliest way possible. Days turned into weeks, and I continued my tattoo removal sessions while also focusing on rebuilding my life. I immersed myself in work and rediscovered hobbies I had neglected. I took up running again, feeling the adrenaline rush as I pushed my limits. It was therapeutic, a way to channel my anger and sadness into something productive. Every mile I logged felt like a step away from the past and towards a new beginning, but the emotional aftermath lingered. I found myself wrestling with resentment and memories that wouldn't fade. I often thought about confronting Jessica again, but I knew that would only serve to stir up more pain. Instead, I focused on myself. I started setting personal goals, things I had pushed aside during our marriage. I signed up for a cooking class, something I had always wanted to do but never had the time for. One evening, as I was chopping vegetables in my kitchen, I got a text from an unknown number. My heart sank as I opened it, expecting some kind of message from Jessica. But as I read the words, my stomach dropped. It was Carter, the tattoo artist she'd been seeing, and he wasn't subtle. "Hey man, I don't want any trouble, but you should know she's been using you as a fallback while she's still with me." I felt the air leave my lungs. Was this guy serious? The audacity. I was furious, and suddenly every emotion I had been trying to manage boiled to the surface. I shot back a text without thinking. "You have no idea what you're talking about. Stay out of my marriage." But then I stopped. I had been handling things relatively calmly, focusing on my own healing, but now I was being pulled back into the drama I had tried to escape. I took a deep breath and realized I needed to approach this differently. Instead of letting his words get to me, I had to use this to fuel my resolve. The next day, I decided to confront Jessica one last time. I needed closure, something to put the final nail in the coffin of our relationship. I reached out to her and asked to meet at a coffee shop. I wanted to do this in public, where emotions wouldn't get out of hand. When I arrived, Jessica was already seated, tapping her foot nervously. Her face flushed when she saw me, and for a moment I could see the flicker of regret in her eyes. But then she quickly masked it with a feigned indifference. "So, what's this about?" she asked, crossing her arms as if to guard herself against whatever I was about to say. "I received a message from Carter," I said, watching her face pale. "He claimed you've been with him while pretending to work on our marriage. Is that true?" Her eyes widened and she stammered, "Tyler, that's not true. Carter is just a friend." but I could see the panic rising in her. It was an instinctive response, and in that moment I knew I had her. "Cut the crap, Jessica. I don't want to hear any more lies. You've already destroyed enough of my trust," I replied, my voice steady. "It's over. There's no going back from this." She shifted in her seat, her bravado crumbling as she faced the reality of her actions. "I didn't mean for it to happen like this. I was confused, and Carter." "Stop. You don't get to justify this anymore," I cut her off. "You made your choices, and they were your decisions to own." Her facade broke, and I watched her tear up. I felt a strange mix of pity and anger. Here was the woman I had loved, reduced to tears because she couldn't face the consequences of her actions. But I had to remind myself that I was the one hurt. I was the one who deserved to heal. "Pack your things, Jess. We're done," I said firmly. "I want you out of my life for good." As I walked away from that coffee shop, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. This was the closure I needed. I wasn't merely saying goodbye to Jessica. I was saying goodbye to the pain she had caused me. I was ready to move forward without her shadow looming over my future. In the days that followed, I focused on moving forward. I immersed myself in my work and the new hobbies I had picked up. I felt a sense of liberation every time I saw the fading remnants of the tattoo on my arm. It wasn't just a physical mark. It was a symbol of my resilience, a reminder that I could overcome anything life threw my way. As I continued my tattoo removal sessions, I realized it wasn't just about erasing the past. It was about creating a new narrative for my life. I was no longer the victim. I was the author of my story, and I was ready to write a new chapter, one that didn't include Jessica or her betrayal. I felt empowered, and for the first time in months, I could see a future filled with possibilities instead of heartbreak. I learned that healing takes time, and that moving on isn't just about getting over someone. It's about rediscovering yourself in the process. And as I embraced my newfound freedom, I promised myself I would never allow anyone to diminish my worth again. I was ready to take on whatever life had in store, unburdened and unapologetically me. In the weeks that followed my final confrontation with Jessica, I found myself navigating a complex web of emotions. I was feeling liberated, but remnants of pain and anger lingered at the edges. Each day became a new opportunity to redefine myself, to rediscover who I was without the weight of her betrayal. I devoted my time to activities that brought me joy. Running became a form of therapy. I would lace up my sneakers and hit the pavement, feeling the rush of adrenaline wash over me with every step. I pushed myself harder, setting new personal records with each run. It felt incredible, a way to reclaim my strength and resilience. With every mile, I could feel the frustrations of the past slipping away, replaced by a renewed sense of purpose. I also immersed myself in my cooking class. I had always loved to cook, but it felt like a hidden talent I hadn't explored in years. I was learning new techniques and flavors, and each dish I created felt like a victory. The more I focused on these passions, the more I began to see glimpses of the person I had lost during my marriage. I felt alive again. One evening, while chopping vegetables for a stir-fry, my phone buzzed on the counter. I picked it up, expecting a message from a friend, but instead it was a notification from social media. Jessica had posted a picture. My heart sank as I clicked on the notification, and I was greeted with a photo of her and Carter, arms wrapped around each other, smiling like they had just won the lottery. The caption read, "New beginnings with my love, read blessed." A wave of emotions crashed over me, anger, sadness, and a strange sense of betrayal all over again. How could she move on so quickly? It felt like she was flaunting her new relationship, almost as if to say she had won something. I knew it shouldn't matter. I was the one who had made the choice to end things, but seeing that image was like salt in a fresh wound. I tossed my phone onto the counter and took a deep breath, trying to focus on the sound of the sizzling vegetables in front of me. But the image wouldn't leave my mind. I knew I had to process this feeling, but it was frustrating. Jessica had been my partner, my confidant, my best friend, and now she was living a life I had thought was ours. It felt unfair, and I couldn't shake the bitterness that rose within me. That evening, I decided to reach out to my friend Brian. We had gone to college together, and he had remained a steadfast support throughout my breakup. I texted him, asking if he wanted to grab a drink at our favorite bar. I needed to vent, to talk it out with someone who understood the situation. When I met Brian at the bar, he could tell right away something was off. "You okay, man?" he asked, concern etched across his face. I took a deep breath and launched into everything that had been happening. I recounted the discovery of Jessica's affair, the confrontation, and now this new development with Carter. Brian listened intently, nodding along as I poured out my feelings. "It's just so messed up," I vented. "I don't understand how she can just move on like that. I feel like I was just tossed aside, like I didn't matter at all." He took a sip of his beer and leaned back in his chair, looking thoughtful. "You have every right to feel that way, Tyler. It's a betrayal of trust that doesn't just go away overnight. But the way she's handling it reflects more on her than it does on you. You're doing the work to heal and grow, and she's just, well, she's running away from the consequences." I appreciated his perspective. It was comforting to know that I wasn't alone in my feelings, that I had friends who cared and wanted to help me through this. We spent the night reminiscing about old times, laughing over silly stories from college. It felt good to reconnect with those memories, to remember that life could still be fun despite the pain I was going through. Over the next few days, I tried to keep my focus on myself and the progress I was making. I continued my tattoo removal sessions, and after each appointment I felt a sense of relief. The marks of Jessica were fading away, and with them, the emotional weight seemed to lighten as well. I was reclaiming my body and in turn my identity. But just when I thought I was getting a handle on things, Jessica reached out again. This time it was a text, short and to the point. "Can we talk? I need closure." My initial reaction was to ignore it. I had given her closure, I had cut ties and made my decision clear. But as the hours passed and I mulled it over, I found myself wrestling with curiosity. What closure could she possibly need after everything? Although I wasn't keen on reopening old wounds, I also understood that I might need to hear her out for my own peace of mind. That evening, I texted back, "Fine, let's meet at the coffee shop." I wasn't sure what to expect, but I knew I needed to approach this conversation with an open mind, even if it was difficult. When I arrived at the coffee shop, I spotted her sitting at a corner table, nervously toying with her coffee cup. She looked different, more put together, but undeniably nervous. As I sat down across from her, I could see the tension in her shoulders. "Thanks for meeting me," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Let's get to it, Jessica. What did you want to talk about?" I replied, trying to maintain my composure. I was still feeling the remnants of anger, but I also wanted to hear her out. She took a deep breath, as if bracing herself for what was about to spill out. "I just wanted to apologize. I know I've hurt you in ways that I can't take back, and I regret it. I thought I could have both of you, but I see now how selfish that was." I felt a surge of bitterness rise within me. "You think an apology fixes everything? You've shattered my trust. You have no idea how painful this has been for me." I know, it was stupid of me. I was confused. I wanted to feel wanted again, and I lost sight of what I had with you," she said, a hint of desperation creeping into her voice. I shook my head. "You had everything, Jess, but you threw it away for a fling." "I'm not with Carter anymore. It didn't mean anything in the end," she said, her voice breaking. "I just wanted to say I'm sorry for what I did. I wish I could take it back." As her words settled in, I realized that this apology felt like a last-ditch effort to regain something that was already lost. I had moved on from the idea of our relationship. I was no longer the man who would bend over backward for her. I was reclaiming my self-worth a step at a time. "Jessica, I appreciate you saying that, but it doesn't change what happened. I've already begun moving on, and I think it's best if we both accept that," I said, trying to remain calm. "I understand. I just wanted you to know that I'm truly sorry," she said, tears pooling in her eyes. I nodded, letting the silence hang between us for a moment. "You need to focus on yourself, and so do I. We both need to heal. I think it's best if we go our separate ways for good." As I walked away from that meeting, I felt a sense of closure wash over me. I had heard her out, acknowledged her apology, and reaffirmed my decision to put myself first. It was a bittersweet moment, but it solidified my resolve to keep moving forward. Over the next few weeks, I continued to immerse myself in the new life I was building. I spent time with friends, began going on occasional dates, and continued my tattoo removal sessions. Each passing day felt like a step away from the pain of my past, and I was beginning to look forward to what the future held. I learned that healing was not linear. Some days were easier than others, but I was determined to keep going. I had the power to shape my life, to define my narrative, and I was ready to embrace the possibilities that lay ahead. Little by little, I was becoming the person I was always meant to be, one who wouldn't settle for less than he deserved, no matter the cost. As the weeks turned into months, I found myself navigating the complex journey of healing and self-discovery. Although the memories of Jessica and her betrayal still lingered in the background, I was slowly but surely building a new life for myself. I was immersing myself in friendships, exploring new hobbies, and even dating casually. It felt exhilarating to step out of the shadow of my past and embrace the person I was becoming. One Friday night, I found myself at a local bar with Brian and a couple of his friends. The atmosphere was lively, filled with laughter and chatter. As we sat around a table, I felt a sense of camaraderie that had been missing for too long. We shared stories, jokes, and a few rounds of drinks, and for the first time in a while, I felt genuinely happy. Around midnight, I noticed a woman at the bar who caught my eye. She was laughing with her friends, and her smile radiated warmth. As the night progressed, I found myself stealing glances in her direction. Brian, noticing my interest, nudged me playfully. "You should go talk to her, man. What do you have to lose?" I hesitated, the remnants of insecurity still nagging at me. What if she's not interested? What if I embarrass myself? "Just be yourself. You've come so far already. What's the worst that could happen?" Brian encouraged, his voice encouraging. After a few moments of internal debate, I decided to take the plunge. I approached the woman, adrenaline surging through my veins. "Hi, I'm Tyler," I introduced myself, trying to keep my voice steady. "Hi, I'm Sarah," she replied, her smile brightening even more as she extended her hand for a shake. "You look like you're having a good time." I chuckled, relieved by her friendly demeanor. "Yeah, just out with friends. How about you?" We struck up a conversation, and I quickly discovered that Sarah was down to earth and fun. We talked about our favorite local spots, shared tales of our travels, and laughed over common interests. The chemistry between us was palpable, and as the night wore on, I found myself forgetting about the pain of my past. By the end of the evening, we exchanged numbers, and I felt a thrill of excitement at the prospect of getting to know her better. We said our goodbyes, and as I walked back to my friends, I felt a sense of lightness. Maybe this was the new beginning I had been hoping for, a chance to build something fresh, something that wasn't tainted by betrayal. Over the next few weeks, Sarah and I began to see each other more regularly. We went on casual dates, explored the city, and shared more laughter than I had experienced in a long time. It felt good to connect with someone who didn't come with the baggage of my past. With Sarah, I felt a sense of freedom and possibility. Yet, as things progressed, I occasionally found myself wrestling with doubt. I worried about opening up again, about becoming vulnerable after everything I had endured with Jessica. I would catch myself hesitating, second-guessing whether to share parts of my life or fears of getting hurt again. But each time I found myself in those moments, I reminded myself of the growth I had achieved. I didn't want my past to dictate my future. One evening, as we sat together on a rooftop overlooking the city, I decided to share my story with Sarah. It was a significant step for me, a moment of vulnerability that I hoped would strengthen our connection. "Can I be honest with you?" I began, my heart racing. "I've been through a lot in the past year." She turned to me, her expression shifting to one of concern. "Of course, Tyler, you can tell me anything." I took a deep breath and shared my experiences with Jessica, her infidelity, the pain, and my journey toward healing. As I spoke, I could see Sarah listening intently. She didn't interrupt or judge. She simply absorbed every word, her eyes filled with understanding. "I can't imagine how difficult that must have been for you," she said softly when I finished. "It takes a lot of strength to move on from something like that. I admire you for working on yourself." Her words meant more to me than I could express. It felt like a validation of my journey, a reminder that I wasn't just defined by my heartbreak. And in that moment, I realized something profound. I was no longer living in the shadows of my past. I was stepping into the light of my future. As our relationship grew, I found comfort in knowing that I could be open and honest with Sarah. She didn't judge me for my scars. Instead, she appreciated my resilience. I began to let my guard down, allowing myself to experience the joy of connection without fear. However, the emotional journey wasn't without its challenges. I still had moments of insecurity, flashes of doubt that would creep in when I least expected it. I would sometimes compare my current happiness with the facade Jessica had put up during our relationship, but I reminded myself that this was different. With Sarah, there was no pretense, no secrets, just genuine connection. One evening, as we strolled through a park, I looked at Sarah and felt a wave of gratitude wash over me. "I'm really glad we met," I said, sincerity pouring from my heart. "You've brought a sense of joy back into my life that I thought I had lost forever." She smiled, the warmth in her expression melting away any lingering fears. "I'm glad too, Tyler. I think we both deserve happiness, and I'm excited to see where this goes." As we leaned in for a soft kiss, I felt a sense of hope blooming within me. I was no longer that broken man who had been shattered by betrayal. I was stronger, wiser, and ready to embrace the future. In the midst of this blossoming relationship, I continued my tattoo removal sessions, which were becoming less frequent as the remnants of my past faded. Each time I stared at my arm in the mirror, I saw not just the absence of ink but the newfound clarity in my life. I was reclaiming my story, rewriting it in a way that honored my journey and the lessons I had learned. As I settled into this new chapter with Sarah, I realized that healing was a continuous process, one that required patience and self-compassion. I was learning to forgive myself for the pain I had endured, and in doing so, I was learning how to love again. I was finally ready to embrace the future, unburdened by the weight of my past. With Sarah by my side, I felt ready to face whatever lay ahead, knowing that I was equipped to handle it with grace and strength. The journey of healing had been long, but it had ultimately led me to a place of hope, love, and renewed possibility. I was ready to take on the world, one step at a time. As spring settled in, the world around me began to awaken, and I felt that same surge of renewal within myself. The days grew warmer and longer, and with each sunrise I was reminded of the fresh beginnings I had cultivated in my life. My relationship with Sarah continued to flourish, and I found joy in the simplest moments we shared together, whether it was cooking dinner, going for late-night walks, or simply talking about our dreams and aspirations. While my healing journey had its challenges, I was finally able to embrace every facet of my transformation with open arms. With each passing day, I felt more like the person I had always been meant to be, resilient, empathetic, and ready to face the world without the shadows of my past looming over me. One evening, as we lounged together on the sofa, watching our favorite show, Sarah turned to me with a glimmer in her eye. "I've been thinking," she said, her tone playful. "We should take a trip together, somewhere we can just relax and enjoy each other's company." I smiled, the idea sparking excitement. "That sounds amazing. Where do you want to go?" "How about a beach? I've always wanted to soak up the sun and just get away for a bit," she suggested, and I could already envision us walking along the shore, laughing and enjoying life together. After a few weeks of planning, we found ourselves on a beautiful beach, the sound of waves crashing against the shore as we settled into our cozy rental. The moment we stepped outside, the fresh sea breeze wrapped around us, and I felt an overwhelming sense of peace wash over me. As we walked along the shoreline, hand in hand, I looked at Sarah and couldn't help but feel grateful for the journey that had brought me to this moment. I was no longer the man burdened by betrayal. I was a man who had learned to embrace love and joy once again. One night, while sitting around a bonfire, I looked into Sarah's eyes and felt a surge of vulnerability. "I want to share something with you," I said, my heart racing. Thank you for being so patient and understanding with me. I've been through a lot and I realize now that I'm truly ready to move forward with you." Her expression softened and she squeezed my hand. "I appreciate you saying that, Tyler. I care about you so much and I want to support you on this journey." In that moment, I felt a sense of clarity. It was time for me to fully embrace this new chapter in my life without the weight of my past dragging me down. As the days passed, I felt a shift within me. I was finally ready to let go of the things that had haunted me. I knew I needed to do something symbolic to mark this transition. So, on our last night at the beach, I decided to take a walk to the water's edge. Standing there, the moonlight dancing on the waves, I took a deep breath and reflected on my journey. I thought about Jessica, the hurt she had caused, and the strength I had found within myself to move forward. I lifted my arms, feeling the gentle breeze envelop me, and I silently released all the pain into the vastness of the ocean. Turning back to Sarah, who had been watching me with a knowing smile, I felt lighter, as if I had shed a layer of my former self. I walked back to her, and together we watched the stars twinkle against the night sky, a beautiful reminder of the infinite possibilities that lay ahead. As we returned to our rental, I pulled her close and whispered, "Thank you for being my partner in this journey. I truly believe we're building something special together." She smiled, her eyes sparkling with warmth. "I feel the same way. Let's keep moving forward together." With that promise hanging in the air, I knew I was ready to embrace whatever came next. My past no longer defined me. Instead, it had shaped me into a stronger, more compassionate person. I had learned the importance of self-love and acceptance, and I was determined to carry that lesson with me. As we drove back home, I reflected on the path I had taken, one filled with heartbreak, growth, and ultimately, hope. I had discovered not only who I was without Jessica, but who I wanted to become with Sarah by my side. Life was a beautiful journey, and I was excited to see where it would lead. Now, with an open heart and a renewed spirit, I was ready to embrace the future, knowing that the best was yet to come. I had finally emerged from the shadows, stepping boldly into the light of a new beginning.